I was at Northwestern University. I studying communications and philosophy. So I'd always had this fascination with philosophy. And, these interesting basic questions of how does the world work? How should we understand the world around us? These basic choices that I think I always knew had a sense that were really important. And philosophy bored the hell out of me. What I read was Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, which was basically like a Mad Max movie come to life, if you know anything about it.
I don't.
What I remember of it was just god awful. It was not only presented such an awful view of man and of the world, but left me feeling, as Plato did, or you might have read The Republic, this is what they have philosophy students read. And so all these philosophers we read, left me feeling more unsure, almost like I went to the doctor to try to get an answer,
right.
and I'm more unsure, more uncertain about myself, useless. The story, there's a very famous philosopher whose name is Jürgen Habermas.
Of course it is.
You know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Well, if this is a big name, he's German. He's German. You wouldn't believe it. I went and sat in his class. My parents paid a lot of money to go to Northwestern, and not only could I not understand a word, literally, I don't know if it was in German or transliteration or what it was, but I couldn't understand it. Just the whole view of philosophy as I understood it was so dark. That's the time someone said to me, "Oh, you need to get into Ayn Rand. You need to read Ayn Rand." So, the story is cliche. It's the old.
That's exactly. I don't know if this is what you're going to say. This is what I've heard with a lot of followers of the Ayn Rand philosophy, is that almost like it struck like a lightning bolt.
Yes.
They had either read one book or it was one interaction with the philosophy, and then it was all over.
Right. People say, I read Ayn Rand and it changed my life.
Yeah.
I read Atlas Shrugged.
Elan said that. Elan Journo.
It's Elan Journo, and not people, people who aren't even with the Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand now, how many decades and decades after her death, sells 100,000 copies of her books every year.
Wow,
year
really?
after year after year. She's a bestseller year after year after year, and it's not because there's a great marketing campaign. Actually, the marketing's terrible for Ayn Rand. She's like a dirty word for most people. But the ideas that she presents are so powerful. For me, as a a lot of young people, we can get into the slam. They always say, it's just for young people. It's just for young people. Ideas are for young people. Young people are the ones who are idealistic. They're open to learning. They're open to new ideas. And Ayn Rand's ideas are so super powerful. So that's when I picked her up, and have just been a happy student of Ayn Rand's ideas and objectivism. I just would say, I would say that objectivism has just improved my life. That's all I can say. I can say it's made my life better, made me more confident of who I am, made me have a much brighter, more benevolent, exciting, I think it's made me a much better businessman and trader, no question. So, it's a philosophy. So it's there's a lot to get into. There's huge perspectives. The more I've learned about it, just the better my own life has become.
Yeah. And in short, because again, we had on Elan Journo, and he did a great job of giving us Ayn Rand's biography and a general overview of objectivism. But just for quick context, correct me if I'm wrong, but objectivism is essentially between the two principles, right, of individualism and collectivism?
Yes. Well, that is a great question, Michele. That's what the book presents. Objectivism is Ayn Rand's philosophy. So that stretches from everything from metaphysics to epistemology to ethics. Aesthetics. There's a lot to get into, and her corpus is enormous. If I may.
Yeah, yes, please. Of course, your book.
This book is, a new textbook of Americanism. Is her perspective and her perspective specifically on politics. And you said it straight off. She starts this book with a very basic, fundamental question. She says, what is the basic issue in the world today? What is the basic issue? Let's not talk about right or left or any, abortion or gun control. Just talk about the basics. So she starts defining Americanism. And that's, Americanism, I think, is up for grabs right now. It is unknown. It is by both parties. I just think that by Americans. I think there's just this complete ignorance about the basic fundamentals of what this country is about. I think it used to exist. It's been lost over many, many years. So she starts, as I said, not on policy, but with a very basic question. What is the basic principle in the world today? It is between individualism and collectivism. That's where you start with a philosophy, with a social system, and with a country.
Great. And about this book.
Yes.
So can you give me the history and the context of this book? Because that's kind of cool in and of itself. Thank
you. Yeah, thanks for asking. It is fascinating. So Ayn Rand is a genius on every level, but an amazing story. So Ayn Rand came to this country. She was an immigrant, came to this country, didn't really even know the language when she arrived.
From Russia.
From Russia. She was an immigrant from Tsarist Russia, from communist Russia. She came to the country to be able to be free to write, to be free. And she was a tremendous success when she got here, huge success. And her story is well documented and very well known. By the time we get to the 1940s, she had already been a very successful novelist. She had written The Fountainhead at that point. And she saw that basically the philosophical trends that she saw emerging in Europe when she left, collectivism, you are your brother's keeper.
What does that term mean exactly? I've heard that a lot.
That goes without saying now. You are your brother's keeper. That's a great example of collectivism that is just everyday. Right. I mean, maybe that's a great place for us to start. You know, what do we talk about in individualism, collectivism? I mean, collectivism is you are your brother's keeper. So, you know, whatever happens to me is your responsibility, Michele. So let me think of what I might do. I mean, you are your brother's keeper means that you don't own your life. Your life is not your own. That whatever happens to your brother is truly your responsibility. And in fact, your own choices are irrelevant because your brother, who's responsible for you, is going to make those choices on your behalf. So, I mean, you are your brother's keeper. And Rand talks about this as, you know, as tremendously destructive. I mean, that's how every collectivist hellhole, every tyrannical dictator started with you saying, you know, you are your brother's keeper. It's for the greater good, country first. These are kind of those stock collectivist slogans that amazingly don't go away. You know, they're back again, and it's because people have really forgotten what America is all about. America is based on individualism. Individualism. So when we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it's your happiness, my happiness, your individual happiness. We say it almost like by rote, oh yeah, life, liberty, but that's so unique, it's so powerful. There had never been any country, still to this day, in the world created specifically on that fundamental principle. And that's what makes America unique. That's what makes this country great.
And so she came here and she recognized that?
Yes, she came here, she had recognized that. She saw that those principles were being eroded and violated for, you know, a lot of reasons, more than anything, the impact of progressive education in the 1920s. So she was recruited by a group of, interestingly, I mean, we are in Hollywood right now. She was recruited by really the top Hollywood stars of the day, Clark Gable and Walt Disney, and
because she was a screenwriter. She
was a screenwriter, and she, as I said, had already been a major novelist as well. So she was recruited to write for a publication that this group of individuals, this group of Hollywood stars really had put together. They called themselves the Motion Picture Association for the Preservation of American Ideals.
Wow.
And a group of concerned citizens who saw communism's encroaching, specifically actually within the film and entertainment business, and recruited Ayn Rand. And so she started what she called, if I may, Textbook of Americanism. That was her original series, was called Textbook of Americanism. She started in 1946, and she sketched out 46 questions that were going to be a layman's guide to just what's this country about? Not for highfalutin, philosophers or scholars or even news people, but just the everyday man. Just what are the principles this country is based on? She answered 11 of them. So she got through 11 of the answers, and then she abandoned the project for really interesting reasons. Actually, the group wanted her to kind of soften down a little bit. She signed her articles that were printed in this publication. Many of the other contributors didn't even sign their names. They wanted her to soften her tone, and for that and some other really fascinating reasons, she abandoned the project. And it was kind of forgotten about. And around that time, actually, in college, when I discovered Ayn Rand, I also discovered her work. Blew me away. It was just this short, I mean, the thing about America, Michele, is that everyone loves this country. No matter what their politics are, everyone would say, I love this country and I know what it's about. I believe I know. This is what America is all about. So everyone has an opinion about America, but so few actually know its fundamental principles. Rand's piece is so effective, so compelling, like all of her writing, to really enunciate and present these basic ideas, to reassociate individualism with what America is all about. And Ayn Rand is the American philosopher. There's this terrible stereotype of Ayn Rand, oh, Russian, oh, that's... She understood this country. This country is the only, she said it's the only moral country in the history of the world. Think about that. History of the world. This country says, you own your own life. You make of it what you will. You are not your brother's keeper. Tremendously powerful. So we have not completed her project. We are representing her project. No one speaks for Ayn Rand at all. But a new textbook of Americanism completes her unfinished questions. And I've recruited some of the great scholars from the Ayn Rand Institute. There's no one political associated with this at all. These are all objectivist scholars, very familiar, obviously, with Ayn Rand's work, to present what they think would be her interpretation of how she would answer those unremaining questions. So a new textbook of Americanism. It's a great basic primer, Michele, introduction for young people especially, but anyone, to what's this basically is the country about.
Yeah.
And it's about individualism, your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness. That's lost from today's politics.
Yeah. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.